Welcome back to another video. Today I got a 2011 F-150 with the big old 3.5 twin turbo EcoBoost in it. We're going to do the water pump. Stay with me, I'll show you how to do it, bleed it, all that good stuff. Alright, here we are at the truck. First thing we're going to do is drain the coolant. So what I've done, I've taken the lid off the reservoir, and then on the passenger side at the bottom, I'll show you it, there's a red nozzle. You're gonna unscrew it, and that's gonna help drain the radiator, and then you don't get coolant everywhere. So let's go down and see that. There it is, right there. That red, you're gonna twist it, and then the coolant will start coming out of the little hole right there. Sorry about that. So after you get the coolant drained, then we're going to go after taking all this turbo plumbing off. Gotta be careful doing it. There's hoses and lines on, just make sure you're checking everything before pulling everything off. You got a clamp here, a clamp here. There's going to be a clamp right here, and then there's a clamp at each turbo down there. One on the driver's side, one on the passenger side. Passenger side you can access through the wheel well if you got to take this one off. So I'm going to set you up and we're going to start tearing off all the plumbing. Alright, we'll start by disconnecting all the hoses. That's good for now. We'll start undoing the clamps. This clamps right, and like the bottom. There we go. There's your little T for the top. I think this one we're just gonna grab a bungee or something and hold it up like that, because we're just trying to get to the water pump, which is right down there. So there are a couple more we gotta disconnect. So this one that runs to the turbo. Okay, I'm going to gain access to the turbo on the driver's side, and then the intercooler down here to take off this pipe. Alright, got this one undone. Let's try to get it out of here. That's tricky to go in. Now we got one more to get out of here. This big giant. Just be careful you don't break all this. Stuff breaks easy, it's brittle. So there's another tube that connects to this down there. Make sure you get that off before you pull this. It's also got a little holder that goes down in a rubber piece down there too, so just so you know. Now we gain access to the pump a little bit better. So get you set up so you can view it down there. Okay, so I've taken the throttle body off, just the 4 bolts, and I've taken the other tube off coming from the intercooler down at the driver's side bottom up to here, so I can get better access to this unit, which is attached to the water pump. So we got to remove this first. Right now I'm going to take off all these hoses. Get all the clamps undone, and then shouldn't have much coolant. There is some. If they're stuck on there, just grab a little some pliers and just light grip. Try to just turn the hose a little bit. Make sure your clamp is far enough down. There we go. Might have some coolant come out. Be a lot more coming out if you don't drain the coolant first. Set that off to the side there so we can get all the access we can get. We also have this little tube coming from the reservoir. This tube right here. So we'll get that off, and then we'll go after the housing. Make sure you twist if it's stuck on there. There we go. Set that off to the side. Don't use. Now before I pull this unit off, I am going to change the thermostat, make it easier. So I'm going to change the thermostat now and then pull everything off. We'll clean all that corrosion and stuff off of there with a wire wheel. Again, might have some coolant come out here. Yep, just a little bit. Okay, got the new thermostat we'll throw in there. Make sure there's no debris or anything in here. Snug for now. Now there's several 8s holding this on. So we'll start taking those out. Break them by hand first so we don't crack any. it comes. Now there's a tube that runs underneath the intake that'll probably come out with it. There it is. There's the tube. Pull the tube out so we can place the O-ring on the other side. There it is. We got one O-ring here, and then one on this side that we'll replace. Now before we take the belt off, we're gonna loosen these 10 millimeter bolts here for the water pump pulley. Looks like someone's been in here and RTV'd it and all kinds of other stuff. We'll have to clean that all off and make sure it's nice and smooth. But yeah, we'll loosen these 4 bolts. Tensioner is right down here. It's like right diagonal, 15 millimeter. And then pull it towards the passenger side. I'm just going to take the belt completely off. Take these off. This should just come right off. And there's your pump, water pump. So on the bottom here, you'll see a little spot. There's actually another, like, almost like tube that this goes over. So you'll see when I get it off. Looks like these are 8s also. There's one up here. Just breaking them all by hand. Breaking them free. So all the way around. Doesn't seem like there's any at the very bottom, just on the one corner up here, here, and here. back in, take our little hammer. There it comes. And there's that little tube I was talking about. See it right there. And there's a little O-ring right here. So now all I'll do is get the gasket off, make sure the surface is cleaned up, and then come back to you when we're putting it back on. Okay, so that's what it looks like, all cleaned up, ready to go. I've got the new Ford water pump right here. Gasket's already installed on it. Now this little piece is the section that goes over the tube. I've put some grease in there just so it slides on easier, doesn't wreck the little O-ring in there. So we're just going to slide that on. Just like so. Grab a bolt. I'll go through and torque them, and the spec as the first pass is 89 inch-pounds, and then we'll go through again and do an additional 45 degrees. So start with this one. Come down over here to this one. This is the sequence that Ford says to do it in. Last but not least is this one up top. Now we'll go through an additional 45 degrees. Starting with the same procedure, or same bolts. There we go. That's installed. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll stick that tube through here and try to get that aligned with the piece in the back. Same thing here is I'm going to put some grease on these O-rings, both ends, just help it slide without catching on the O-ring or anything. Now let's see if we can't fish this through. There it is. You can reach your hand around the back of the intake and kind of feel it also, but you'll feel it slide in, and that one's in. Now we'll go to the thermostat housing. Okay, here's the thermostat housing, and for the piece that goes through the pipe, I just put some grease around there so it slides onto the pipe, even though the pipe's got grease. That way, no catching on the seal or anything. Oh, it slides in like nothing. Also, I replaced this seal on the back. Replaced that one. Very nice. I'll take our 4 bolts and put them back in. And the first pass is 71 inch-pounds. And then another 45 degrees. There we go. Thermostat housing's on, the pipe's on, water pump's on. Now we can go through and put this pulley back on for the pump. Ford's water pump comes with a new pulley and everything, so we'll snug it up. Once we get the belt back on, we'll tighten them down even more. There we have it. I'll get the belt together, and we're gonna replace this hose too. That runs over from the heater core to here and then up to the reservoir tank. It's also leaking in through here, so we'll replace that and put the belt on, and we'll wrap this up here soon. Okay, I've got the belt on, all the hoses and connected. I've got most of the plumbing for the turbos back in there. I just left this T-piece off. Now we're going to bleed the cooling system. I use an airlift. It's a device that essentially pulls vacuum on the cooling system and then uses that vacuum to put coolant back into the system. So it comes with 2 hoses. One's to pull a vacuum, and then this hose over here is into a 5-gallon bucket over here full of coolant. Pretty easy to use. You're gonna stick this in there. This works best if the radiator is empty. Now this has got a vacuum gauge on it, and you're going to want to get it over to the 25, the greenish area. And then to switch hoses, we're going to close this valve, and that should hold pressure, or should hold vacuum, I'm sorry, should hold vacuum if there's no leaks. So let's try it out. Make sure the valve's open. This uses shop air to work, so it might get a little loud. You see the gauge is climbing right now, drawing a vacuum. You'll see some of the hoses start to collapse. About 20 right now. The gauge is moving. You want it into the green, 25-ish area. You see some of the hoses down here are starting to collapse because of the vacuum. $26, $27. About 27. It's holding there. I'll let it keep vacuuming for a minute. Okay, now we're going to close the valve so we can unhook this hose, and we're going to plug in the other hose. And during that, it should still hold vacuum. Still at 27, still holding. So now we're going to take this hose, plug it in, and now it's going to convert that vacuum into drawing the coolant that's over here in the 5-gallon bucket. We're still at 27. Now we're just going to open this valve, and it's going to start filling it with coolant. So it's vacuumed all the air out in the system, and now it's replacing all that air with coolant. As this fills up, you're going to see the vacuum start to drop, which is normal. The closer it gets down to 0, that's how you know you're full, or you're getting close to filling it up. About 5 now. Two. Pretty steady at 2, so we'll. Yep. Now we'll close the valve again. You will leak some coolant out of here. Drain the rest of the tube into the bucket here. Open the valve back up. There it is. I don't know if you can see where the coolant is, but it is a little over full, and that's all right. What we'll do is we'll pull a little bit of it out. We'll start it up after I get the rest of the plumbing back in. We'll start it up, let it go through get up to operating temp, and we'll let it fully cool down. Check the coolant, top off if need be. Shouldn't have to, but if you do, top it off. And then again, make sure it doesn't overheat or anything like that. It shouldn't. You should be good to go. So I'll get this back together, and then we'll run through the cycle. Okay, so I've got the rest of the plumbing back in. Throttle body's on. I did not show putting that back on, but the torque specs for the throttle body is 89 inch-pounds. All the hoses connected here. Everything's connected and ready to fire it up, so let's go do that. Now we'll turn on the HVAC system to the heat. Now as this warms up just at idle, you should start feeling some heat. If you have no heat and the temperature gauge is almost operating temp, you might have some air in the system, but you shouldn't using that airlift. So what we're gonna do right now is I'm just gonna let it warm up and make sure I got heat both sides nice and hot, and we'll come back. Alright, so if you can see, the temperature gauge has barely moved, really. It's moving a little bit, but it's got great heat coming out of the vents. That's a good sign. Considering, according to the temperature gauge, we're not even close to operating temp, so it's moving a little quicker now. So now what we'll do is get it off the hoist, go take it for a test drive, make sure everything's good, let it cool down, check the coolant, and that should be a wrap. So we'll take it for a test drive. Alright, so we're just getting back from the test drive here. Temperature's reading good, heat's good, everything's good. About an 8-mile, 9-mile test drive. Heat's blowing out fantastic. Everything is looking good. So there you have it. That's how I do the water pump on these F-150s with the 3.5 twin turbo EcoBoost. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.